Hey everyone, what's going on? Earlier tonight, I was listening to the Gematria Effect, which is Zachary K. Hubbard's radio show that is on Truth Frequency Radio every Wednesday night. And I had band practice in Omaha last night, and I wasn't able to listen to it. So tonight, I was just kind of doing a little bit of research. I was blogging about the Kanye West stuff that's going on in the mainstream media. And while listening to this that aired last night, there was a caller that called in from Omaha, Nebraska. And it just stuck out to me. I've listened to pretty much every episode of this radio show, and I don't remember very many people calling in from Omaha, Nebraska. And I live in Dunlap, Iowa, which it's not Omaha, but I really associate a lot with Omaha because I only live about an hour away from Omaha. I don't associate with like Des Moines or Cedar Rapids. That's all way farther away. Omaha, Nebraska is the major city that I live by. So I thought it was interesting. Somebody from Omaha, Nebraska was called in. And what they called in about was the Von Mauer mall shooting that happened at the Westroads Mall in 2007. And I was just thinking, man, I wish I could have called in last night because I had a whole bunch of stuff that I could have added to this person. You know, I've since 2014, I've documented about this story and just bits and pieces here and there, but I had a video from 2014. And later on, this person even called in again to mention one last thing, and they ended up being the last caller of the night. So I thought, how interesting. That person even stands out on the show a little bit to me because they call in, they're from Omaha, and then they end up being the final caller as the show is like fading out or whatever. And it just made me redocument a little bit about this and relook up some of my old information. So that's what I'm going to show in this video. And if you're new to what I'm talking about, I talk about these patterns and signs and symbolism that exist within our mainstream media every single day. And if you understand the language of gematria, which is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, and numerology and some other ancient knowledge things such as astrology and hermeticism, these are things to look up if you're new to this channel or watch some previous videos. But every day our mainstream media is coded this way, but I'm telling you, everything around us exists with this code. And if you pay enough attention, your own life is somehow synced up to these other things that are going on. And there are people in this world who understand this knowledge, and they're using it to essentially play God over the rest of the world. They understand these patterns, these signs. They know how to manipulate it to basically rule over the world. So all that being said, the story, a long time ago what I had documented about this story was that the shooting happened on December 5th of 2007, and that has a date numerology of 44. 12 plus 5 plus 20 plus 7. 44. And the word shooting in gematria, if you write out the word shooting, that equals 44 in gematria. Notice shooting also equals 109, just like Omaha, Nebraska, but I don't want to lose you here, but Omaha, Nebraska, the same as shooting, so a perfect place for a major shooting. But shooting equals 44. The shooting happened on a date numerology of 44. The word kill equals 44. And what really stuck out to me in 2014 was that the shooter's name was Robert Hawkins. And this was in the end of 2007. And if you look up the movie called The Cloverfield, if you've ever seen that movie, the main character also is named Robert Hawkins. And the movie came out on January 18th of 2008, which just so happens to be exactly 44 days after Robert Hawkins shot up the Westroads Mall. Then we get a main character in a movie named Robert Hawkins 44 days later. And the word shooting equals 44. And, The date numerology was 44. Even if you look up the Westroads Mall, the Westroads Mall was founded on the date, or it opened on the date of August 1st of 1968. August 1st. If you go from August 1st to the day of the shooting, it was 4 months and 4 days. Another 44. 4 months and 4 days. Westroads Mall was opened on August 1st, 8-1. Look what Westroads Mall equals in Gematria, 81. I'll just type it out on the calculator for you here. Westroads Mall equals 81. That's why it opened on August 1st, right? And then the shooting happens 4 months and 4 days after the anniversary of it opening on a date numerology of 44. The word shooting equals 44. It comes out 4 months and 4 days, or it comes out 44 days before the movie Cloverfield comes out with the main character has the same name as the shooter. I also pointed out that the Robert Hawkins in Gematria equals 80, just like Omaha, Nebraska equals 80. And his name also equals 163. Let's write Robert Hawkins out for you. Robert Hawkins, it equals 80, also 163. The reason that Robert Hawkins equaling 163 stands out so much is because we're told that his birthday was May 17th. And if you go from, it actually was a leap year, but normally if you go from the date of his birthday, May 17th, from the day of this shooting, it was 163 days, right? And notice the shooting was on the date of 12/5, or also in most parts of the world, they read it as 5/12. And it was also 5 months and 12 days before the date of his birthday. And this is also interesting because 163 is the 38th prime number. The word murder equals 38. The word death equals 38. Gematria equals 38. Kabbalah, where Gematria stems from, equals 38. That's why the band Slipknot has a song called Gematria, the Killing Name, because people get murdered by the numbers, by this system. And another reason that that sticks out so much, this is the 38th prime number. In Gematria, Omaha. Omaha also equals 38. And so does the word mall. The word mall equals 38. This was 163 days before his birthday. His name equals 163. It's the 38th prime number. It happens in Omaha. That equals 38. The word murder equals 38. I mean, you can't deny that. But anyway, the only real reason that it even stuck out to me was when I started thinking about this Westroads Mall shooting. I remembered that the character, can't think of the guy's name right now. I should have re-looked it up. It's in one of these posts, but the guy who played Robert Hawkins on the movie Cloverfield, he also portrayed as Robert Kennedy in the movie LBJ. That was all about how he dealt with things after the JFK assassination and whatnot. And I just recently, the last video that I actually was able to put on YouTube, just so happened to be about Robert Kennedy. Let me pull it up really quick, show you. The last video that I just did, it was about Robert Kennedy and the bus boy who supposedly died, all synced up by the numbers. You can check this video out if you want, but I just thought that was interesting. You know, something to do with Robert Kennedy. I just recently documented about Robert Kennedy. And what's even weirder is I made this big, long video last night that will not load, talking about the Cleveland Indians and stuff that I've been documenting about all year. And all of this synchronicity stuff that is going on and how it's connected to Cleveland. And that's why we got the Kanye West and Jim Brown visiting Donald Trump today, because it's all to do with Cleveland, that hopefully I'll make a video on after this. But for some reason that video, and hopefully this video will work, but for some reason that video on screencast, it gets to 64% and then it just freezes my whole computer up and I have to shut my computer down. I've tried it a ton of times. It just won't work. I can't get it to go to my desktop. I don't know how to upload it. And I really don't want to remake like an hour-long video talking about all of these things that, a lot of people probably don't understand anyway. But, it's kind of off topic here, but a big gist of what I talked about was all of this finger symbolism that was going on, and the movie Bruce Almighty, where he becomes like God, and he meets God on a ladder, right? God's coming down the ladder, and if you look up Freemasonry, that's what it's, a whole bunch of stuff with it. It's symbolic. The ladder is symbolic because it reaches up to Sirius, which is the all-seeing eye, and then Jim Carrey becomes like God. His name in the movie is Bruce Nolan. That equals 42. Bruce Nolan equals 42. Just like the word Freemason, right? And he becomes like God, and God comes down the Freemasonic ladder. And that movie was all about numbers and signs and patterns. Exactly what I have been documenting about. And what's interesting about that, Jim Carrey, his name in Gematria equals 417. And I was talking about the Indians all year in regards to the curse of Rocky Colavito that happened on the date of 417, right? And that's the same day that Barbara Bush died. And that's why the same day the Indians got knocked out of the playoffs, we got the story of her granddaughter, also named Barbara Bush, having a wedding and whatnot. And much, much more that goes along with it. But Jim Carrey equaled 417. And it was odd that this video kept stopping at 64%, because what I call this program, it's actually called Screencast-O-Matic, but I've always just called it Screencast, and when I typed out Screencast, it just so happened to equal 417 and also 64, like the percentage that it's stopping at. And now, now I'm making this video about Robert Hawkins that equals 64, it's just kind of interesting. The Indians also lost with a score of 11-3, and Curse of Rocky Colavito equals 113. They lost to the Astros, who were the team who won the 113th World Series. And a big day that I was talking about with the Indians was the date of 6/24, and how Rocky Colavito and Satanic Gematria equals 624. The team he got traded to equals 624. And it was the Detroit Tigers, and they played each other on 6/24. But on 6/24, the Astros also beat the Royals 11-3, right? Curse of Rocky Colavito. And they're the team who knocks them out. Pretty interesting stuff. But I don't want to lose you here. Let's get back to this story here. But I do kind of want to lose you, because that's what I'm talking about in these videos. Everything in this world is truly interrelated, and there are things that happen for a reason. If you pay enough attention, you see how they're interrelated. And this, this not loading, for whatever the reason, it was showing me this pattern that I was still documenting about, It's showing me the same pattern by this not working. Whether it's, somebody that understands technology that is somehow making this happen, or possibly it's just God, or whatever is truly going on in this world with these patterns and signs and symbolism. And, if you understand Freemasonry, it has a lot to do with all of this, right? And such as phi, the golden ratio, and whatnot. So God doesn't necessarily have to be some guy just sitting up in the clouds. It could literally just be this pattern that exists that's, that is all around us. And if you understand it, you can essentially be God, right? So that's why I document a lot about this synchronicity stuff too, because it's really important. And to me, the only way that we're going to stop people from using this system to rule over us is for us to completely understand it and, learn how to apply it. Because if we don't learn how to apply it, there's no way we're ever gonna make this world a better place and, stop the people who are doing this from, making all of these bad things happen and creating a world of just mindless slaves. We're never gonna stop that without fully understanding this system. And there's no doubt in my mind that this system exists and we can all use this, and we can use this system for the greater good. And the more and more I document, and the more minds we get to this, eventually, collectively, we're going to figure this out, or somebody's going to figure it out and show the rest of us how it all works, and hopefully we can create a better world by using this system. And I just don't think that going to Washington and killing Donald Trump and shooting all of the politicians and all the Freemasons, how is that gonna work, you know? I mean, I get why people are angry and whatever else, but these people obviously are on some type of higher spiritual level or higher understanding than the majority of people in this world. So how are we going to go and just stop them in some physical way when they can understand, you know, they can create this world by understanding this mathematical pattern that exists, you know? We need to understand this, and then we can take this world back. So anyway, another interesting thing that in regards to this story and Robert Hawkins and whatnot, I went back and I looked at one of my old posts in regards to this, and I talked about something that I've been talking about recently, the Sutherland Springs church shooting and how it synced up to JFK and whatnot. And that's what I talked about in my Robert Kennedy video that I just recently put out. I talked about all of this same stuff that I was documenting about. And later on in this post, I go on to talk about the TV show called 24, and I talk about how in this TV show, the former black president actually gets assassinated. Something that I was talking about in regards to Super Bowl 51. And then I went on to talk about the Cloverfield and the Westroads Mall and this TV show called Stranger Things that's in Hawkins, Indiana. But the reason that I thought it was so interesting that this Cloverfield thing from this post was I also mentioned stuff about the TV show 24. This was from November 6th of 2017. The reason that I thought it was so interesting was because just recently I had synchronicity with Family Guy, and it reminded me of the Boston Red Sox and South Park that I talked about a long time ago. I had synchronicity with Family Guy just after the Boston Red Sox beat the New York Yankees. I looked up at the TV, and Lois Griffin just so happened to be wearing this. And I was talking about how it's connected all this finger symbolism. And then here you are with Lois Griffin having the pointy finger with the Boston Red Sox and whatnot. And there's a whole lot that goes along with it. I wish I can make that video work, because this video will make a lot more sense if I can get that video to upload. But the season 11, episode 4 of South Park, I made a video on in regards to the Russians are trying to get a bomb to Boston. I was talking about the Boston bombing, but think about it. The 114th World Series, and then, you know, it was season 11, episode 4, South Park and Gematria equals 114. And anyway, this whole episode is a spoof on the TV show 24, right? About the first black president possibly being assassinated. And the reason that's so interesting is because Barack Obama was the 44th president, right? He was the 44th president. Think about all the 44 that goes along with the Robert Hawkins, Von Maur, you know, the Westroads Mall Shooting. 44. Donald Trump's the 44th person to be the president. And in one of these old posts, let me find it. Let me see if I can find it. In one of the old posts about the Cloverfield, I even wrote in there how the number 163 synced up to Donald Trump, or to Barack Obama. Hold on, let me find it here. Yeah, I wrote in this post, Robert Hawkins 163, Barack Hussein Obama 163. I was just throwing out maybe a possible headline here. Obama assassinated 163. Make America Great Again 163. And that's interesting in regards to I just documented about, like, before, while I was listening to the Gematria Effect, I was talking about the Kanye West stuff, and he's wearing the Make America Great Again hat or whatever, and he said it made him feel like Superman. So, I don't know, it's just kind of funny that it all syncs up that way. 163. But the movie The Cloverfield, or Cloverfield, if you go back and watch that movie and read the description, what I documented a long time ago about how that movie was also synced up to Donald Trump. That movie supposedly comes to an end on the date of May 23rd, 523, and Donald Trump in Satanic Gematria equals 523. And normally that's the 143rd day of the year, and that Von Mauer shooting just so happened to happen. It began at 1:43. I don't know if I have a picture of it in here. It began at 1:43 p.m. So think about it. The Cloverfield ends on the 143rd day of the year. Cloverfield did come out in 2008, which was a leap year, which would have been the 144th day of the year. And that's interesting because if you write out 44, it equals 144. And just watch the previous video that I put out about Robert Kennedy. I talked about all of these 144s and 44s and how they synced up to Donald Trump and JFK and a whole bunch of things. So another thing, in 2014, when I went back and watched the video, I didn't really talk about Gematria at all in the video, but I just talked about these number patterns. And what I talked about was that it said that he originally walked in the store at 1:36, and then he left, and then in the story it says he came back 6 minutes later, and then he went in and got on the elevator. He came back in, got on the elevator, and then started shooting at 1:43, and he shot for 6 minutes. So he left the building for 6 minutes, he came back in, waited a minute, then the shooting lasted 6 minutes. They told us that after 911 was called, it took the police 6 minutes to get there. And then they said that there were 6 Von Mauer employees that were killed, and there were 6 people injured. And they told us that Robert Hawkins was taking medication, and he was also doing therapy since the time he was 6 years old. And the Westroads Mall, if you know Omaha, it's on Dodge Street, which is also basically Highway 6 or US Route 6, right? So what are the odds of all these 6s? And in the movie The Cloverfield, they follow 6 people from New York at a going away party. So there's all of these 6s that were in the story. You didn't even have to know Gematria. You could just understand that there was a numerical pattern that existed with it. And when I went back and watched this video, I talked about synchronicity, right? And I talked about these odd things that were going on. I put this video out on November 24th, and within the video, I looked up the company who owns the Westroads Mall, and the only guy that you could click on was Matthew Bucksbaum, and he just so happened to die on November 24th. And then also when you look up the Westroads Mall Shooting, when you look this up, it tells you it was the deadliest mass murder in Nebraska since this guy, Charles Starkweather. You click on him, and his birthday was November 24th. And then when you look up Robert Hawkins, scroll down here and find Robert Hawkins. When you look him up, they mention how just before this shooting, he got ticketed on November 24th for serving alcohol to minors, right? So November 24th was a special, important thing, and I randomly put my video out on November 24th. Like, what are the odds that I would put my video out on November 24th? And I even talked about in the video how this topic just randomly came to my head, so I documented about it. And then while documenting about it, I noticed all of these connections to the same date that I had put this video out. So, I mean, just think about it. Something had to have put that idea in my brain. Something in my life happened that put this idea in my brain to look this up on a certain day that it did. And then when I look it up, I notice these patterns of how this story in history syncs up to something that I just did, something that was going on within my own life. So I'm going to end the video there, but a couple last things in regards to synchronicity. So now tonight, this happens, this guy from Omaha that stands out to me just because I'm from this area, never really heard of anybody that from Omaha that has called into the show. I think there was one other person, I can't remember, but I feel like there was one other person, and they talk about the Westroads Mall thing. And so I re-look it up, and would you believe that before November 24th, I looked all this up on October 11th, and if you go to November 24th, it's 44 days away. And also, I looked up the company again that is owned, that the Westroad Mall owns, and they must have just sold to a different company, and that company was founded on August 28th, just so happened to be 44 days ago. 44 days before I looked this up, you know, and then that shooting happened on a date in numerology of 44, right? Shooting equals 44. It was 44 days before the movie Cloverfield came out. You can't make that up, you know. You can't make it up. So, what else did I write in here? Oh, I wrote in here too that it was interesting that Donald Trump just came to Council Bluffs, Iowa on the date of 10/9, and Omaha, Nebraska equaling 109, just like shooting. And Council Bluffs is basically, it's just right across the river from Omaha. I mean, it's sort of like a suburb of Omaha, even though I don't think it technically is, but I pretty much just consider them the same thing. So it's just interesting, I guess, that Donald Trump came here. This is like where the Mormon Trail began. Super duper Basodic, you know. Something I talked about with the Cleveland Indians in 2016 even, because the Mormons are who brought the Omaha Indians were the reason that the Mormons even came to Council Bluffs. It used to be called Canesville, and there's just too much to re-explain, but, you know, just remember that. And then in Mormonism, they believe that, you know, the ancient Israelites came here a long time ago, and then they split up into two groups. There's the Nephites and the Lamanites, and the Lamanites were the ones who fell away from God, and they were basically the Native Americans that we see today, you know. But it's interesting that he came on 10/9, and Omaha, Nebraska equals 109. So just something to watch out for. Possibly we're ripe for a new story connected to Omaha, Nebraska. Lil Wayne was connected to Omaha, Nebraska in 2016 as well, and we just got the people getting injured or whatever at his concert. And Lil Wayne equals 38, just like Omaha, so he had to emergency land in Omaha that year. So I don't know, I just wanted to show some of the synchronicity. Thought it was interesting, this person from Omaha calls it, and it just sparked my brain. And then I start seeing all of these things that sync up to that story and sync up to the exact day that I'm looking this story up. So hopefully it makes sense. Check out some videos and the description. Check out the other channels. We got Zach's book in there. We got the Gematrinator, so you can, you know, literally come here. You don't have to do this all by hand. It's very simple to understand, very simple to learn. If you can add and subtract and you know your alphabet, then you can understand the system and pay attention to the patterns that exist within your own life and patterns that exist within the media and the sports leagues, and pay attention to how everything in this world has a connection. You know, it'll start making sense. So have a good one. Peace.